Sometime later, they saw a clown running towards them. His face was painted in colorful pastels. At first, he threw a tennis ball into the air, and while the attention of the surrounding people was drawn to the air, he conjured a flower out of thin air. It was a Seville chrysanthemum. The clown brought the flower before Melissa and Benson. The flower was golden in color and symbolized happiness. Melissa and Benson looked at the clown in a daze. All they saw was a wide smile plastered over the pastel face. It was a happy smile, an exaggerated smile, a ridiculous smile. Benson and Melissa also looked away and cast their gaze to the smoky pillars in the garden in the middle of the street as they looked forward to seeing the underground transportation system in Backlund. Carrying his suitcase with an expressionless look, Klein walked past them with his body kept straight. He entered the departure station, facing the mass of people pouring into the land of hope, people filled with wonderful hopes in their hearts. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. He is. He just had his dinner after a busy day at work, the malt-colored lad replied politely. May I know who you are? Klein chortled and said, Tell the good detective that a friend of his has returned from his vacation. The young man was taken aback as he blurted out, Mr. Sherlock Moriarty. Klein's gaze froze as though he had returned to Earth and had walked onto the streets which were filled with people. Then he noticed that 3 cocoons had opened. They were empty and were swaying with the wind. Raising his head, Klein took in this sight as he observed in silence. Suddenly, Klein's body trembled. His voice came to a halt as he froze on the spot. In his line of sight, a figure had appeared on a chair beside the full-body mirror in the room. He was a young man of medium build, wearing a dark-colored jacket and trousers. He looked like a mixed-blood man with Loan and Balam roots. This was the marionette that Klein had lost, winner Inuni. Inuni smiled as he faced Klein's pair of eyes that could no longer move. Don't randomly leave your marionettes around. They can be tracked. As he spoke, he slowly stood up. He casually took out a crystal monocle from his pocket and slowly wore it on his right eye. At that moment, he seemed to see his parents, his deceased teammates like Joshua and Antiona, Lovia in a purple-patterned black robe, and the grizzled Colin Iliad. They stood beside him and pressed their hands against the door, pushing the grayish-blue door with him. Beads of water streamed down Derek's face as a heavy creaking sound echoed in his ears. A crack appeared, letting golden sunlight flood in. The gap grew bigger and bigger, and a golden sea gradually appeared in Derek's eyes, presenting itself in front of Colin Iliad's eyes. Upon seeing this scene, the corners of Colin Iliad's lips twitched slightly as he bathed in the warm sunlight. The corners of his lips pulled up slightly as he revealed a faint smile and a faint yearning, his body evaporating bit by bit. Light was the meaning to everything. The Evernight Goddess's projection said with a smile, I'm not sure where you were hanging above that door of light. After I left, I never went back again. Indeed, Klein sighed inwardly. From the details, he confirmed the origins of the Evernight Goddess Amanius. The 3 cocoons of light that tore open were side by side, he replied simply. The Evernight Goddess's projection was silently floating in the darkness, giving off a surreal feeling. She said softly, the people there were all candidates meant for the Lord of the Mysteries revival. But due to some unknown incident, he lost control of many things. If it wasn't for that, I would have died long ago and lived with the identity of the Lord of the Mysteries. Then you and Roselle wouldn't have had the chance to return to reality. This means that the death of the celestial worthy is more thorough. He can only rely on the will left inside the Beyonder characteristic and the mechanical arrangements of Sapphira Castle to revive. Klein sighed and smiled. I can already hear him whispering into my ears. Backlund, in a solarium of a terrace house. Melissa walked in with a girl who was clearly less than 10 years old. "Aunt Melissa, why here?" the little girl asked, puzzled. "All the stories I heard had mysterious rituals held in the basement." With her hair tied up, the bespectacled Melissa smiled and said, "Those are unconventional mysticism rituals." She pointed at the altar that had been set up and the unlit candles and said, "You may begin." "Really?" The little girl tilted her head to look at the bright sunshine outside the window. "Do we need to draw the curtains?" "There's no need. It's pretty good this way." After Melissa answered, she smiled at the little girl while she awkwardly mimicked her usual method of holding rituals in a clumsy and unfamiliar manner. During this process, she would instruct her from time to time, and even personally help her to complete the pre-ritual preparations. "All right, repeat after me." Melissa took a deep breath as her expression gradually turned staid. "Yes, yes." The little girl tried her best to appear stern. Melissa looked at the candle flames on the altar for a few seconds before slowly reciting in ancient Hermes. "The fool that does not belong to this era. Da pool that done belong to dis ella." The little girl had never learned ancient Hermes before. Although she tried her best to imitate her aunt, she still didn't know what she was saying. "You are the mysterious ruler above the gray fog," Melissa continued reciting. "Da Mester West Luler above the gray pog," the little girl recited in all seriousness.
"You are the king of yellow and black
who wields good luck." After Melissa finished reciting, the candle at the end didn't wait for the little girl to imitate her. It immediately burgeoned to the size of a human head. In the large flame, a slippery tentacle with a somewhat sinister pattern extended out in an indiscernible manner. It was extremely slow. The little girl was stunned. She retreated and hid behind her aunt. Melissa pursed her lips and said with a gentle smile, "Don't be afraid. Go greet him." The little girl timidly poked her head out from behind her aunt and saw the terrifying, slimy tentacle gently swaying in the brilliant sunlight that shone through the windows. It seemed to be attempting to swat away the dust, or was waving at her. "Go, don't be afraid," Melissa repeated. The little girl finally mustered her courage and stood in front of the altar. She recited the incantations she had just invented before revealing a sincere smile and raised her palm. The slippery tentacle, whose patterns had disappeared, paused for a few seconds. It seemed hesitant and somewhat out of practice. Then it raised its head and curled up slightly, lowering itself inch by inch. Amidst the sunlight, it high-fived that tiny palm.